Do you remember when I said that you are my favorite viewer? You are my favorite viewer. But there are other viewers. They don't mean anything to me. You are still my favorite viewer. But they're always asking me questions, as if I know what I'm talking about. They don't realize that I'm just some YouTube hobo making stuff up as I go along. So to deal with the constant onslaught of questions that people are asking me, I'm going to make a new series of videos, maybe 1 or 2 times a month. I was going to call this series Ask Randy, but that sounds lame. So I'm going to call it Stupid Human Questions instead. Or maybe just stupid questions, or maybe questions from stupid people. I don't know. All these other viewers, they're always asking questions. They're leaving comments on YouTube. They're leaving comments on my Facebook. They're leaving comments on random pages on my website. So to make it easier, I've created a page, a place where you can submit your question to ask me. And then once a month, I'll go through them and get the best ones, and I'll answer them here for everyone to enjoy. The questions can be about anything. GMRS radios, ham radios, how the universe was created, how much money does Xenu make, off-roading, who cuts my hair, where to get the best cheeseburgers, whatever. You have a question, I'll answer it. So to submit your question, go to my website, notarubicon.com/ask-Randy. I'll put a link to it right there. And I'll put a link below in the information section, right below my Bitcoin address. Just type your question in there. It will come to me, and I might answer it. I will try to keep these episodes short because I know how you like to tell people that your time is very valuable. So here are the first 5 or 6 questions that have come in. The first question comes from Dan Taylor, and he asks, why would anyone want to ask you a stupid question when they know you're going to expose them to the world in a video called Stupid Questions? Dan, let me explain something to you. That is a stupid question. Our next question comes from Red, WRJH335. He's a ham operator. You can tell because he put his ham call sign in as part of his name. And he asks, how could anyone, FCC or volunteer FCC police, tell the difference if you are using a ham on GMRS channel 16 or an actual GMRS radio on channel 16? Very common question. Many people post that question when on my videos about how using a Baofeng ham radio is illegal on GMRS. And if you read through those questions that people ask on my older videos, you'll see a range of answers from idiots leaving comments. There's a couple of ways to answer this. So technically, there is something called radio fingerprinting that takes expensive equipment, and I'm sure the FCC has it. And if you're a terrorist trying to bring down the US government and you're using a Baofeng radio, they could fingerprint that radio and directional track you and know that it's you by talking on that radio, because every radio has its own specific characteristics or fingerprint. They might be able to know what type of radio it is. If you have the Roger beep on, then they know that's a Baofeng, because only the Baofengs make those beautiful Roger beeps. The real answer is nobody will really know if you're talking on a ham radio or a GMRS radio unless you have your Roger beep on, and then that makes it easy. So technically it is possible to know what type of radio you're using. The FCC has the technology, but they're never going to use it on you. And it's probably pretty safe to say that in the real world, nobody out there listening is going to know either, unless you have the Roger beep on. The next question comes from Mrs. Not a Rubicon. How come you always leave the toilet seat up? I ask you over and over to please put the toilet seat down when you're done, and then the next time I walk in there, the toilet seat is still up. Probably for the same reason that you never let me. The next question comes from Edgardo in Texas. Hello, Randy. How much usage is your new repeater getting? Any issues? From Edgardo, your favorite viewer from Texas. Why, thank you for asking, Edgardo. So let's back up. I built a GMRS repeater from scratch using a couple of Wuxin KG 1000G radios. You can watch that video. It's a series of videos. starting right there. There's not a lot of people in my area that use GMRS, so it doesn't get a huge amount of usage. There's already a couple of regulars that use it. So every night it is getting used, mostly by the same people. Every day we'll get a few new check-ins, but not a whole lot of usage just because there aren't a whole lot of people in the area using GMRS, even though there's GMRS repeaters on every frequency here. We have that luxury. Nobody's using them. The next question comes from Red Meredith. I wonder if that's the same Red as before. I had heard that the great Baofeng name means storm in Chinese. Have you heard this? Yes, Red. Everybody knows that. It's common knowledge. Baofeng means storm in Chinese. This question comes from David. Is it necessary or recommended to test SWR on a GMRS handheld if you add a not stock antenna to it? Dave, let me just take a moment to thank you for your question. Your questions mean a lot to me. Handheld radios are tough because it's almost impossible to get a good SWR reading off of them. I've made a couple of videos in the past where I tried measuring the SWR on the handhelds, and I just don't even bother anymore. The reason is because when you're holding the radio and you're talking on it, your hand and your head act as a ground plane. And when you put a meter on the antenna to measure the SWR, it moves the antenna away from the radio, thereby changing the ground plane characteristics. So then you get a higher SWR, which is inaccurate. But if you've bought a GMRS antenna, there's really no need to. If you buy a UHF antenna, which is probably tuned to work best on lower frequencies than GMRS, you're probably going to get a higher than perfect SWR, but it's tough to measure because that whole thing I just mentioned. So if you make sure you get a GMRS, make sure it says GMRS on the label, you shouldn't need to measure it. It should work just fine. Just put the antenna on, go outside, and enjoy your radio. And now I have a question for you, my favorite viewer. The ADD idiots can't make it this far into the video. They get distracted after a minute or so and they click away. So I'm glad that you made it. You're still my favorite viewer. So leave your answer to my question in the comment below. Should YouTube require an IQ test before allowing people to leave comments on YouTube videos? That's my question for you, my favorite viewer. Thank you for watching. And remember, there's no such thing as a stupid question, only stupid people that ask questions.